Hello guys, this is Skill Dimension. We make short videos on latest and popular technologies, and this is a Java interview question series. Hope you guys enjoy it. What's up guys? Today we will look into the question of singleton. So interviewer can ask what is a singleton class and in how many ways you can implement it, or what is a singleton design pattern. So singleton design pattern is a creational design pattern. So by creational means it controls how the object of a class is getting created. So let's see. For implementing singleton design pattern, we just need to do two things. First is control the default way of creating objects. Okay, so guys, in our class, what is the default way we create our objects? So we can say like my class c1 equal to new class, new my class, right? So that in turns calls the constructor. So first is controlling the constructor. Okay, we'll see in a bit how we're going to do that. Okay, second is we need to provide the alternate way of creating objects. Sorry, here I missed the objects. Yeah. Okay, so by providing these two, we will be able to implement the singleton pattern. It's been enough of the theory guys. Now let's see some code in action. So firstly we want to implement the first point, that is controlling the default way of creating objects, that is controlling the constructor, right? So for this I just created a class. Just don't overthink the name for this class for a moment. I'll explain it in a bit detail. So first thing is we made our constructor private. So because we know that our objects are created by constructor, we just made this private so that no one can access it. Okay, so and the second point is providing the alternate way of creating objects. So here I'm creating the object in the first line itself, right? And I've created another static method which is returning this instance. Okay, so we have implemented both the points. First is controlling the constructor and providing the alternate way of getting the instance of this class, right? Let's see how can we create the instance of this class. For this I created a class called singleton demo and a main method in it. Okay, now I just created a reference variable which is getting the instance and just calling this method m1. In m1 we are just printing the count variable value and just incrementing it. Here is the count variable. Okay, now let us just run it, and we can see that firstly our singleton constructor is called, then this get instance method is called, then we can see that method 1 has printed the value of count, that is 0. So how can we prove that there is only one object of this class? So for this I can create another variable which is also getting the instance, and then again I'm going to call m1. Okay, now let's run it. So here you can see at the first time the value is 0 and at the second time the value is 1. This happened because this count variable was incremented in m1 when we were calling for a1. Okay, so when we were again calling for a2, already the count was having value 1 and that it printed here. So to understand it more in detail, we can see in our whiteboard. Here guys, this my class is a singleton class and we are getting the instance and saving it in the variable a1. Okay, so what it will do is it will point to the object in memory, okay, and which is having the value of count, that is equals to 0. In the next line we are doing a1 dot m1, that will print the count value and increment it to 1. Then we are assigning the same instance to a2, so this will also point to the same object. Okay, and when we call a2.m1, it will print the count value, that is 1, and then increment it to 2. Okay, so this is what's happening in our code. Now that we have seen an implementation of Singleton Design Pattern, we can look into some other interesting things. Now let me just comment this code and call another method of this class. So there is this display method which just prints a line. Okay, let me just try and run this. Okay, so first thing to notice is this Singleton constructor is called. Okay, this one is called, and after that we are getting our line inside display method. Okay, so whenever we are loading our class, the instance is getting created. Okay, so that is why we call this type of implementation as a early initialized singleton. Whether we need it or not, this instance will always be created. That's why we can see this line Singleton constructor called here. Okay, so this was not the smart way of creating the object, because we were calling display method and our instance was getting created. Okay, so we can just remove this and look into some other smart way to create our instance. Okay, so the another implementation is called lazy initialize singleton. In this, we are not creating the instance here. Like whenever our class is loaded, we are not creating the instance. But inside the get instance, firstly we are checking whether this instance variable is null or not. If it is null, then only we are creating a new instance. Otherwise, we will just return the same instance. Okay. Now let me just run the same method display inside this lazy singleton, and let us see the output. Okay. Here we can see only the display line which was inside this is called, and the constructor line was not called. Okay, so this is a smarter way. What we were doing before we were just creating instance here. Okay, and in this, inside of get instance, we are first checking for the nullability. If the instance is null, then only we are creating a new instance, otherwise returning the same one. Okay, and for getting the instance, we can always do this. You can call the get instance method the same way we were doing in early initialized singleton. Now, for all of you folks who are preparing for entry level Java interviews, like for freshers or 1 to 3 years of experience, you don't need to watch the whole video. You can just tell about these two types of singleton design pattern in your interviews, and that should be fine. But for the experienced folks, I would suggest that just go through the whole video. So now we can remove this code and see into one more interesting or advanced concept. Now I'm just going to create a thread. Okay, this is just a simple thread class extending our thread, that is Java's thread class, and just in the run I'm printing the thread number and I'm calling that get instance method. In the get instance method, I'm just printing this line whenever we are creating new instance. Okay, for already existing one, I'm printing this one. Okay, and I'm going to create two variables of this thread class and just calling their start. Okay, so let me just try and run this. Okay, here this is a very interesting thing. Whenever we are running this get instance method, and we have two threads, thread 0 and thread 1. Okay, but we cannot be sure which thread will access this method first. So thread 0 is coming here, it is saying that instance is null, and then it is printing this line. Okay, this line. Then we are just returning this instance. At the same time, when thread 1 was returning this, thread 2 enters, it also creates the instance and returns it. See, we can see here. So instead of our implementation of singleton pattern, there are two new instances getting created because of multi-threading. This was not expected because singleton pattern says that there should be only one instance of a class. Okay, now that we understand there is a problem with multi-threading, let's try to see into an implementation which solves this. So here I created this thread safe singleton class, which is having the same code that was there in lazy initialize singleton, just I put a synchronized keyword here. This synchronized keyword will force or will allow only one thread to access this method. Okay, so at a time only one thread will be entering. So let me just change this lazy initialize singleton to thread safe singleton in our thread exec class, for which we are creating these instances here. Okay, now let me just try and run it. Okay, so we got the output. Let us try to analyze it. So two threads are getting initialized, right? First thread is entering, but only one thread. Okay, first thread is entering and thread 1 will be in waiting state. When it is entering, it will be creating a new instance and it will be returning the instance. After that, so it will be entering, creating a new instance. This constructor is called. Then after that, this thread 1 will enter and it will see that this instance, which is a variable inside this class, it is not null because it has been initialized. Then it will not come in this if block, it will just directly come here and print instance is not null. That's why returning already created instance. So we have solved our problem of multi-threading that was there in lazy initialize singleton. So this is an improved way, and this is the way where how it is used in mostly projects in the industry, wherever we are using multi-threaded execution. So guys, we have seen the three implementation of singleton design pattern. The first one was early or eager initialize singleton, where we are creating the instance during the class loading only. Okay, the other one was a lazy initialize singleton, where we are creating the instance only when this get instance method is called. The third one was thread safe singleton, where we put this synchronized keyword. There are also other implementation like double check synchronized implementation, or like static block initialize singleton implementation, and others also. So do let us know if you want video on that too. That's it for this video. So guys, do let us know what you feel about the video, and also let us know if you want video on any particular question. So that's all guys from Skill Dimension.